All right, Deonte Banks here is someone who, the Giants traded up a spot to get him, which is, it's always weird when teams do that, when they trade up one spot. This has now happened twice in this draft class. I always wonder exactly, in a way, kind of what they're doing is they're basically giving up a couple of late picks to Jacksonville for basically saying, hey, Jacksonville, just don't draft this guy. We'll give you a draft pick, actually two draft picks. Just don't draft this guy, which a little surprised you give up two draft picks to move up from 25 to 24. Again, very late draft picks, but still just a little surprised that that's what happened. But they really wanted a corner, and I'm sure Jacksonville I'm assuming they were kind of maybe at least thinking about Banks, and so for the Giants, making sure that they can just get the guy that they want. I really like Deonte Banks. I think he's a really good player, and I think that I don't hate this selection whatsoever. I think that it at this spot, it totally makes sense to me to go after a corner, which is a position of need for them. I see why they might want to go after this. I had Banks as a mid-first rounder, so him going late first round totally works. Again, for the Giants, they have plenty of needs. They really do. I kind of felt like they were one of the teams where they should just draft best player available. But in this scenario, I kind of do feel like best player available is also a position of need. So in this spot, I think it makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of my thoughts. Because again, you have some players who can play corner, but they could use another guy, and he should fit that scheme well. I do wonder, what their board was like if they traded up a single spot. That's the last thing I feel like I have to say. I don't know exactly what the mindset was on that still. I really have to imagine this was kind of the last player, or maybe they just really liked him and liked the position of need. I'm assuming that's what it is. But again, there's definitely plenty of I really like the pick, I guess is what I'll say. And giving up pick 160 and then a pick in the 200s, that's probably worth it. So yeah, anyways, let's get into the player. If you look at his Pro Football Focus page, you see that his numbers are honestly pretty terrible. I mean, this is not what you want to see from a hyped-up prospect, although a couple of things to note. I had him as my fifth favorite cornerback, or actually fifth favorite secondary player in general, fourth favorite cornerback. So I'm not too concerned about this because this stuff does not translate too well to the NFL. It doesn't. There's some position groups where the evidence shows that if you draft a player who has poor PFF grades, you're getting a bad player. Cornerback is not one of them. Plenty of guys came out of college with bad PFF grades and turned into good players, and I could totally see Banks being one of them. Now, couple things to note. Well, yes, a 72 grade isn't a disaster. That's a fine college player. And when you factor on, it's really kind of his only year as getting significant playing time, 680 snaps. It makes you feel a little bit better about it. Although, again, a couple things that we're noting as well. Run defense grade, very poor in the bottom quarter of eligible players, according to PFF, and I don't disagree. But let's talk about who he is as a player, what the issues are, but also what the benefits are, because I think there's a good amount. So let's get into it. So we're going to start off with this play. What's going to happen is it's zone coverage, and you see that there's a receiver running a route that's going to just get underneath Banks' route. And the reality is, Banks makes a conscious effort to give up this stuff. He does. And I'm assuming this is a coaching thing, which, listen, there's pros and cons to it. Because, watch what's going to happen. Watch how when this play begins, you see that Banks right here, the receiver is starting to cut, and he's still staying back, and he's giving up space. And again, it's quarters coverage. You don't want to give up anything deep. That's kind of the point of quarters coverage. But still, he's taking it, a bit more extreme than the average corner does. And, you see it on the other side of the field. The other corner is doing the exact same thing. So, to me, and Banks is actually a little bit more aggressive than the other corner. So, I'm assuming this is a coaching thing, but this is definitely something that to know about how Banks plays, you have to just know this is part of how he plays. He gives up stuff underneath, at least he did in college, which is also unusual given the fact that he ran a 4.35. You'd think he'd be a little bit more aggressive. But the reaction time, also a little bit slow, kind of leads to an easy completion, and it really just seemed like that's how they wanted to play their game, was give up those completions. They were fine with that. That's kind of how they view that stuff. So again, that's just a necessary component of knowing how Banks plays. Now let's go over to a play like this. Let's talk about kind of some one-on-one matchups here where it's, one-on-one, complete one-on-one, watch what happens. Right when this play begins, again, Banks giving up a good amount of space, and at this point, this is, in part why they give up space, because if you cut, well, now he can come back and make a play. Watch how the cut then goes to the outside, but I would say Banks really covers that pretty nicely. So we're just in scramble drill at this point. Play has gone on long enough. The receiver kind of looks downfield and says, hey, there's nobody there. Let me just try and see if I can, shed Banks and then potentially gain some space. And this is part of what I like about Banks is, listen, in the NFL, there's such good route runners, you're going to get out of position. It's just going to happen. But I think really good corners can come back, and that's what I like to see out of corners. And as you see, this is what Banks is able to do. He is able to come back. He knocks that ball away. That's really good stuff from Deonte Banks, and I like to see that. So to me, this was a very good play. He was able to make sure he didn't give up that initial separation, and then in a scramble drill where, kind of due to no fault of his own, he got put in a really difficult situation, he was still able to thrive and still did not give up much. So I think that's a very good play by him. Also, something like this, where what's going to happen is it's going to be just a true one-on-one matchup, receiver running a go route. Okay, a lot of times in football, this is what it comes down to. Can a receiver win on the outside, and can a corner cover on the outside? Well, look at how when this play begins, you see how the receiver moves towards the inside, and you can see why the quarterback wants to make this throw, but it's not really wide open. And again, keep in mind Banks' closing speed here. Watch how this throw is made, but Banks just does not give up that separation. Also a bad throw. Probably could have been intercepted. Maybe should have been intercepted by Banks. But either way, even if that's a perfect throw, it really would have taken a perfect throw and a great catch to make that a completion because Banks is able to kind of just hang with guys. So those are just, again, some more of the things that I like about him. Now, again, kind of the one thing I would say is there are a couple issues. Again, I don't love that he's not a run stopper too much. I don't love that he's 23. Would like to get a younger guy in there for sure, especially when he doesn't have a big sample size of what we've seen him play. There's, those couple of things are knocks that I think are fair. But like this is the other thing I would say is like a fair knock that you really see on tape is in the slot right here, receiver running over the middle. Look at how when this play begins. Again, Banks a bit slow when getting over, right? He has such great speed, but sometimes the slow reaction time can hurt him. Because at this point, again, it's just he's putting himself so far behind the 8 ball right here. As you see, he tries to get back, but at that point, it was just too late and ends up being a touchdown on that play. So that's something I would like to see him get a little bit better at, and I think that's another fair criticism. But as a whole, I think the good outweighs the bad. And again, there are ways that, in theory, you can fix those issues. And while typically you kind of think, okay, 23-year-old prospect, don't know if I love drafting him and hoping to fix some of his issues, again, doesn't have a ton of playing time, which means that it makes more sense for him to be a bit more raw than his age would suggest, which I think is an important thing to note. So yeah, as a whole, those are kind of my thoughts on Deonte Banks. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on him as a player? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.